The first rains of the monsoon had just arrived, turning the dry dust of the coastal village into the scent of
Hear
earth
what
and sea
happened to
salt.
Mina's son?
The coconut trees swayed heavily in the
No,
damp
what?
wind, their leaves
Tell
whispering
us.
secrets to one another. The fishermen returned early that day, their boats rocking gently against the tide, as the temple bells rang in celebration of the annual festival. It was under those bells, amidst the glow of oil lamps and the hum of prayers, that Ravi first saw Anjali. He was 17, tall for his age, with the lean strength of someone born to the sea. His hands were calloused from helping his father mend nets, his skin bronzed by the sun. He had lived in the village all his life, but until that moment, he had never noticed Anjali as more than the schoolteacher's daughter. She stood at the temple steps, her sari pale yellow, dampened slightly by the misting rain. A garland of jasmine flowers wound through her long black hair, their fragrance mingling with the scent of wet earth. Her eyes, dark, curious, carrying a quiet fire, lingered on the deity inside the temple, but Ravi felt as though they looked right through him. For a moment he forgot where he was. The crowd moved around him, women balancing trays of coconuts, children darting through puddles, old men discussing the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. But Ravi stood rooted, his gaze fixed on her. Anjali turned, just slightly, and their eyes met. It was not long, a single heartbeat, perhaps two, but in that glance, something shifted. Ravi, startled, lowered his eyes quickly. His ears burned as though the whole village had witnessed his secret. He forced himself to walk away, blending into the crowd of boys his age, pretending to laugh at their jokes. But his mind was elsewhere. That evening, as he sat with his father repairing nets under the weak light of a lantern, Ravi's hands worked mechanically, but his thoughts returned again and again to that fleeting look. He remembered the way her sari clung to her in the rain, the way the temple flame reflected in her eyes. "Why are your stitches so uneven today?" his father grumbled, inspecting the net. Ravi flushed. "Just tired," he lied. But it was not fatigue. It was restlessness, the kind that stirs when something new, something dangerous begins to bloom. The next morning, as the rain poured steadily, Ravi found himself drifting near the schoolyard. He had no business there. He was not a student anymore. But something drew him. And there she was, standing at the veranda with a slate in hand, gently correcting the younger children. She noticed him. For a moment, Ravi almost turned away, but Anjali's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Not bold, not careless, just enough to tell him that she remembered the glance at the temple too. And so it began. Day by day, their eyes sought each other in the narrow spaces allowed, at the temple, at the well, across the marketplace. They did not speak, not yet. But already the monsoon winds had carried their secret across the salt-heavy air. Something unspoken was alive between them, fragile as the first bud of a hibiscus, yet strong enough to survive the storms that loomed ahead. And the storms would come. For love in their village was never just between two souls. It was a battle with the weight of family honor, with traditions older than the banyan tree at the village edge, with a destiny that often bent not to the heart, but to the will of others. But for now, under the rains, under the watchful eyes of the gods and the careless chatter of villagers, Ravi and Anjali had seen each other, truly seen, and neither of them would ever be the same again. The rains lingered for weeks, heavy and unrelenting, turning the narrow dirt paths of the village into streams of flowing mud. But the monsoon that year seemed to carry more than water in its veins. It carried secrets. And one of those secrets was Ravi and Anjali. Their first real conversation happened by accident. Ravi had gone to the banyan tree by the edge of the fields, a place where he often sought quiet after long mornings at sea. The branches stretched wide like a canopy, its roots thick and twisted into the earth. There, shielded from the drizzle, he found Anjali, sitting with a book on her lap, her sari's edge tucked neatly under her knees. For a moment, he froze. He had not expected her there. She looked up, startled, and then her lips curved into that faint smile he had carried in his memory since the festival. "You come here often?" she asked softly, her voice carrying through the curtain of rain. Ravi swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "Sometimes. To think." Anjali closed her book, her eyes curious. "And what do you think about Ravi the fisherman's son?" He hesitated, then laughed, scratching the back of his neck. "Mostly about fish, and sometimes other things." Her laugh, light, unguarded, struck him like music. From that day, the banyan tree became theirs. In the evenings, when the village quieted and the lamps began to glow in the windows, Ravi and Anjali would meet there. At first, their words were shy, hesitant. He told her of the sea, how it breathed like a living creature, how it could be generous one morning and cruel the next. She told him of her books, of poems she had memorized, of faraway cities she dreamed of visiting one day. "You see the world in the sea," she said one evening, her eyes on him. "And I see the world in words. Maybe that's why we found each other here." Sometimes they said nothing at all. They simply sat side by side, listening to the rain drum against the leaves, their silences more eloquent than words. But as days passed, silence was no longer enough. Ravi began to notice how her hand would brush against his when she passed him a fallen leaf or pointed to a bird in the branches. He felt the heat of her closeness, the thrill of being near her in a world that seemed, for those moments, untouched by rules. And one evening, as the last light of day melted into dusk, he asked the question that had been burning inside him. "Anjali, do you believe in fate?" She tilted her head, thoughtful. "My mother says fate is what the gods decide. My father says fate is what society allows. But me." She hesitated, then looked at him directly. "I think fate is what the heart chooses, even if the world says no." Ravi's chest tightened. He wanted to reach for her hand, but fear held him back. Instead, he whispered, "Then my heart has already chosen." Her eyes widened, and for a long moment, neither of them breathed. Then, slowly, carefully, she placed her hand in his. The world seemed to shift. The banyan leaves swayed, the rain softened, and in that quiet, Ravi and Anjali crossed a line they could never return from. From then on, their meetings grew bolder. They lingered longer beneath the tree, sometimes until the lamps in the village were extinguished one by one. Ravi carved her name into the bark, hidden deep among the roots. Anjali began to write poems on scraps of paper and slip them into his hands when no one was watching. But the village has sharp eyes and sharper tongues. And soon, whispers began to stir. Old women at the well glanced knowingly when Anjali arrived later than usual. Ravi's father scowled at his son's distracted silences. The banyan tree, once just a refuge, was becoming dangerous. Yet Ravi and Anjali clung tighter to their secret world, as though the rains themselves were protecting them. And under the endless downpour of the monsoon, love, young, fragile, and defiant, bloomed in their hearts. They did not yet know how heavy the price would be. The rains did not relent. Day after day, clouds gathered like watchful sentinels above the coast, spilling their weight onto the fields and rivers. But in the village, another storm was brewing. One made not of water, but of whispers. Ravi and Anjali had thought themselves careful. They met at dusk when the fisherman returned and the lanes filled with noise. They walked apart in public, eyes lowered, their words carried only in letters hidden beneath stones near the banyan roots. Yet secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, and the village was too small for love to stay hidden long. It began with glances. An old woman at the well noticed how Ravi lingered whenever Anjali passed. Children giggled when they saw the fisherman's son watching the teacher's daughter with a look too intense to be casual. Soon, women carrying baskets of vegetables began to trade knowing smiles. And then came the words, hushed at first, then louder. Have you seen them by the fields? They think the rains will cover their sins. A girl's honor is her family's honor. Does she not know this? The gossip swirled like monsoon winds, finding its way into the ears of both families. One evening, Ravi returned home to find his father waiting by the doorway. His father's broad shoulders were tense, his brows furrowed like storm clouds. Where were you? The older man demanded. By the shore, Ravi answered, forcing calm into his voice. Don't lie to me. His father's voice was sharp, carrying the authority of a man who had lived his life by the rhythm of tides and rules. The village talks, Ravi. They say you follow the schoolteacher's daughter like a shadow. Tell me it isn't true. Ravi clenched his fists, fighting the urge to confess everything. They talk too much, he muttered. His father stepped closer, his eyes dark. A fisherman's son and a teacher's daughter? Do you think such a match is possible? Her family seeks respect, not nets and salt. Do not bring shame upon us. The words cut deep, but Ravi stood silent. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of defiance pressing against his chest. Across the village, Anjali faced her own storm. Her mother, usually gentle, had grown sharp in her watchfulness. You are not a child anymore, she warned. Every step you take is watched. Every glance is judged. Do you wish for disgrace? Anjali's heart pounded, but she bowed her head, saying nothing. She dared not admit how her soul already belonged elsewhere. That night, at the banyan tree, Ravi's anger spilled out. They treat love like a crime, he said, his voice trembling with frustration, as though the gods themselves will punish us for what we feel. Anjali touched his arm gently. It is not love they fear, Ravi. It is the village. It is tradition. My parents live inside rules they did not create, rules they cannot break without breaking themselves. Then we will break them, he said fiercely, gripping her hand. I don't care what they say. I will not let them take you from me. Her eyes shimmered with both hope and fear. She wanted to believe him, but already the weight of expectation pressed against her heart. The banyan leaves rustled in the wind as if warning them. For in villages like theirs, love was not just between two souls. It was a thread pulled taut between families, honor, and the invisible chains of tradition. And already those chains were tightening. The monsoon winds had grown wilder, tearing through the coconut groves, flooding the narrow paths of the village. But for Ravi and Anjali, the real storm broke not in the sky, but within their homes. Anjali's father was the first to act. A stern man with ink-stained fingers and a voice that carried weight in the village council, he had tolerated the whispers long enough. One morning, as the rains pounded against the tiled roof, he summoned her. She entered the room quietly, her sari clinging to her frame from the damp air. Anjali, he said, his tone measured but unyielding, I have heard enough of these rumors. You are not a child to be chasing shadows under trees. You are the daughter of a teacher. You will not ruin our name. She bowed her head, but her silence was answer enough. Her father's jaw tightened. Tomorrow you will leave for your uncle's house in the next district. There, no foolish fisherman's son will distract you. Until then you will not step beyond this threshold. Anjali's breath caught. Appa, please. No. His voice was final, like the slam of a temple door. That evening, Ravi waited under the banyan tree, his heart quickening at every rustle of leaves. But Anjali did not come. The rain fell harder, soaking through his clothes, chilling him to the bone. Still, he waited, hoping, praying. When at last she appeared, it was with hurried steps and tear-filled eyes. They are sending me away, she whispered, clutching his hands as though to anchor herself. Tomorrow, to my uncle's house. They mean to keep us apart. Ravi's heart clenched. Then I'll come with you. You can't, she said, shaking her head. They will never allow it. If you try, they'll call it dishonor. They'll crush us both. Ravi pulled her close, his voice trembling. I don't care what they say. Let them call it dishonor. Let them call it sin. I cannot lose you. Her tears mingled with the rain as she whispered, but we have no choice. You must be strong, Ravi. Promise me you will wait. He pressed his forehead against hers, the storm roaring around them. I will wait a lifetime if I must. The next day, as dawn broke over a rain-soaked horizon, Ravi stood hidden among the palm trees, watching as Anjali's family prepared her departure. She carried only a small bag, her face pale, her eyes lowered. Her father walked beside her, firm and unbending, while her mother followed, silent but sorrowful. Ravi's heart screamed to run forward, to tear her away from their grip, but his feet remained rooted in the mud. He could not risk making her burden heavier, and so he watched, helpless, as the cart rolled away, carrying her beyond the flooded fields, beyond his reach. That night, the banyan tree stood silent, its roots heavy with rain. Ravi sat beneath it, alone, his hands digging into the earth where once her fingers had rested. The village thought it had succeeded. The whispers faded, the rumors died, and the world went on as before. But Ravi knew the truth. Their love had not ended. It had only been forced into silence like a river diverted underground, waiting for the day it would surface again. And in his heart, he swore. No matter how many storms came, no matter how far she was taken, he would find her again. Years passed, carried away like the tides that shaped the coast. The monsoons came and went, each one leaving its scars upon the land and upon the people. Ravi grew into a man in that time, though the boy who had once waited under the banyan tree never truly vanished. He worked the sea with his father, shoulders broadening from the weight of nets, skin darkened by the sun. The waves had hardened him, yet beneath the calluses and salt, his heart remained soft for one name only, Anjali. Every festival, every market day, every monsoon season, he searched the lanes with quiet hope. But she never returned. Letters never came. The banyan tree, once filled with laughter and whispered vows, stood as a silent witness to a love that seemed swallowed by distance. Until one morning. It was just after the rains had eased, when the air was fresh with the scent of wet earth and blossoms. Ravi was hauling baskets from the boats when a murmur ran through the marketplace. Heads turned, voices hushed, then rose again with curiosity. Ravi followed their gaze, and his heart stopped. Anjali. She stood by the spice stall, her sari a deep maroon, her hair coiled neatly with jasmine. She looked older, more graceful, her face touched by years of quiet battles. But her eyes were the same, dark and alive, carrying storms within them. For a moment, Ravi could not move. Then, as though the sea itself pushed him, he stepped forward. Anjali's eyes lifted, meeting his. And in that instant, the years dissolved. Neither spoke. The noise of the market faded, the crowd blurred, and only the two of them remained. Later, under the banyan tree that had once been their refuge, they finally found words. I thought I had lost you, Ravi said, his voice rough with unspent years. Anjali's hands trembled as she clasped them together. They tried to keep me away, my father. He thought time would make me forget. But time only carved you deeper into me. Ravi's chest ached, torn between joy and sorrow. Then stay now. We've lost enough years already. Her smile was sad, her eyes glistening. It isn't so simple, Ravi. They've already chosen for me. A man named Vikram, wealthy, respected. My father has promised my hand. Ravi's fists clenched, fury rising like the tide. Do you love him? No, she whispered. I love only you. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of both hope and despair. Ravi reached for her hand, and this time she did not pull away. In that fragile moment beneath the tree, they let themselves be as they once were, young, unafraid, full of dreams larger than the village walls. But as dusk settled and lamps flickered across the fields, Anjali pulled away gently. "They will not let me go easily," she said, her voice breaking. "And if you fight them, Ravi, they will not only destroy me, they will destroy you too." Ravi's jaw tightened, his heart torn between reason and the fire that burned within him. "I have waited years," he said quietly. "I can wait no longer. Whatever comes, Anjali, I will not let them steal you from me again." The banyan tree swayed above them, its roots deep, its branches wide, as though listening, as though knowing that the old promise between them had just been renewed. And somewhere in the distance thunder rumbled, a warning of storms yet to come. The village woke each morning to the sound of roosters, to nets being hauled from the shore, to the clang of temple bells. But beneath those ordinary rhythms another tension hummed, the quiet defiance of two hearts refusing to surrender. Ravi and Anjali met whenever they could, though each meeting was a gamble, at the banyan tree, by the temple courtyard at dusk, on the path near the fields where the lanterns flickered in the distance. Every stolen glance, every whispered word carried both joy and danger. "Do you know what they say of you?" Ravi asked one evening, his voice taut with anger. "They call you Vikram's bride already, as if you belong to him." Anjali's face stiffened. "I do not belong to him. I never will." "Then tell them," Ravi urged, his eyes burning. "Tell your father, your mother. Tell them your heart is mine." Her hands trembled as she reached for his. "If I speak, Ravi, they will lock me away. They will silence me until there is nothing left of me. You know what honor means here. To them, it is worth more than my life." Ravi drew a sharp breath. The fury in him surged like a tide against the rocks. "Then I will speak. I will stand before them and tell them you are mine." Anjali's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. "No. If you do that, they will shame you, exile you. They will strip your family of respect. They will call your love a crime." He cupped her face in his rough hands, his voice breaking. "Let them. What is life worth if I must live it without you?" Tears welled in her eyes, but behind them was the spark of the same fire that burned in him. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "Then we must be brave. Braver than we've ever been." From that night their love was no longer just a secret. It was a rebellion. Anjali stopped lowering her eyes when she passed Ravi in the village lanes. He no longer avoided the market when she walked through it. Their defiance was quiet but unmistakable, and it rattled the gossipers more than silence ever could. The village murmured louder now. Women shook their heads, men muttered of dishonor, elders scowled. But Ravi and Anjali no longer flinched. For the first time, they let the world see what had always lived between them. Yet in the shadows, another figure watched. Vikram. He was older than Ravi by several years, broad-shouldered, wealthy from land his family owned inland. Where Ravi smelled of salt and sea, Vikram carried the fragrance of oils and silks. He had been told Anjali would be his, and he believed it. When word reached him of her closeness to the fisherman's son, his pride stung like a wound. "She thinks she can choose?" he said to his father, his voice low, dangerous. "I will not be shamed before the village. She will be mine, whether she wills it or not." And so, the storm gathered. For now, Ravi and Anjali still clung to each other under the banyan's branches, still whispered promises into the night. But already the winds of fate were shifting, and the sea itself seemed to grow restless. Love had made them bold, but it had also made them visible. And in their village, visibility was peril. The days grew heavier with expectation. The rains had eased, leaving the air thick and damp as if the earth itself held its breath. In the village, talk of Anjali's marriage to Vikram filled every corner, from the well to the temple steps. The date had been fixed, invitations whispered, preparations began. Ravi felt the news like a blade against his chest. Each morning, he threw himself into work at sea, rowing harder than the others, hauling nets until his muscles burned. But no wave, no storm, no weight of fish could drown the thought of Anjali walking into another man's home. One evening he went to the banyan tree, where Anjali was already waiting. Her face was pale, her eyes shadowed. She had heard the same whispers. "They've set the date," she whispered, her voice brittle. Ravi's hands curled into fists. "Then I'll stop it." Anjali shook her head quickly, fear in her gaze. "You don't understand, Ravi. If you stand against them, they will ruin you. My father will see to it that your family is cast out. Your father's nets will be taken from him. Your mother shamed. They will not just break us. They will break everyone you love." Ravi stepped closer, his voice trembling with fury and desperation. "And if I do nothing? If I let them take you away, then what life is left for me?" Anjali's lips parted, but no words came. The truth was as heavy in her heart as it was in his. Either path led to ruin. But Ravi was no longer a boy. He had spent years fighting the sea, learning its rage, its patience, its cruelty. And he had learned this: when the storm rises, a man does not cower. He faces it head on, or he is swept away. That night he went to Anjali's house. The lamps burned bright within, shadows of her family flickering against the walls. Ravi stood in the courtyard, drenched by the misting rain, and called out in a voice that shook the silence. "Teacher." Anjali's father appeared at the doorway, stern and unyielding, his wife behind him. Neighbors gathered quickly, drawn by the boldness of the fisherman's son daring to stand at the threshold. "I will not hide anymore," Ravi declared, his chest rising and falling with each breath. "I love your daughter. I have loved her since we were young, and she loves me. No man, no promise, no wealth can change that. If you take her from me, you will not just break her, you will break me too." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some murmured of scandal, others of bravery. Anjali appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. Her gaze met Ravi's, and in it was both terror and fierce pride. Her father's face darkened. "You shame yourself, boy. You shame your family. Love is not enough to build a life. What do you have to give her but salt and fish?" "I have myself," Ravi said firmly. "I have a heart that will not betray her. I will give her more happiness with empty hands than your Vikram could with gold." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the hiss of rain on the courtyard stones. Anjali's father's jaw tightened. "Leave now before I make you regret this insolence." But Ravi did not move. He stood like a mast against the storm, his eyes locked on Anjali's. And in that unspoken exchange, her tears, his fire, the village saw the truth. Theirs was not a childish infatuation. It was love, raw and defiant, willing to stand against the world. That night the village buzzed with talk. Some cursed Ravi's recklessness, others admired his courage. But one thing was certain: there was no turning back. The breaking point had been reached, and as thunder rolled faintly in the distance, the sea whispered of storms yet to come. The night before the wedding, the monsoon returned with a vengeance. The sky split open, rain thundering onto rooftops, rivers swelling with rage. Lightning cracked across the horizon, illuminating the sea in violent flashes. It was as if the heavens themselves sensed what was about to unfold. Ravi moved through the storm like a man possessed. His clothes clung to him, drenched, but his steps were steady, resolute. Beneath his arm he carried a small bundle. Not much, just enough to survive the first days away. He had chosen the time, the place. By dawn, Anjali would no longer belong to anyone but him. At the banyan tree he waited, the roots half submerged in water. The branches whipped in the wind, groaning as though they carried the weight of fate itself. And then, she came. Anjali's sari was soaked, clinging to her as she stumbled toward him. Her hair, once carefully coiled, now streamed loose around her face. Yet even in the storm, her eyes held that same fire, though fear flickered at its edges. "Ravi," she gasped, clutching his arm. "If they find us gone, they will hunt us down. They will never forgive us." He pulled her close, his voice fierce against the roar of the storm. "Let them hunt, let them curse. We will be far from here by dawn. A new village, a new life, just you and me. No one can stop us now." For a moment she pressed her forehead to his chest, letting herself believe. The rhythm of his heartbeat steadied her, gave her courage. But as the wind howled and rain lashed against them, doubts clawed at her. She thought of her mother's weary eyes, her father's unyielding face, the weight of generations bound by tradition. Could she really cut herself free from it all? "Ravi," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if I cannot leave them? What if I fail you?" His grip tightened, his eyes burning with desperation. "Then I will carry you. I will fight every wave, every storm, every man who stands in our way. But do not ask me to live without you, Anjali. I cannot." The storm raged louder, waves crashing against the distant shore as if echoing his plea. For a heartbeat, Anjali closed her eyes, imagining it. A life beyond the village, beyond rules, where her days were filled only with his laughter, his strength, his love. It was all she had ever wanted. But fear is a cruel thing. It coils around the heart, tightening until dreams falter. And as the thunder shook the earth, fear sank its claws deep into her. "What if we are punished?" she said, her voice breaking. "What if the gods themselves turn against us?" Ravi cupped her face, rain streaming between his fingers. "Then let the gods strike me down. I would rather face their wrath than lose you." Lightning split the sky, illuminating them, two figures clinging to each other against the fury of the world. And yet, in that very moment, a figure appeared at the edge of the storm. A lantern flickered through the rain, voices shouted. The villagers had noticed her absence. They were searching. Anjali froze, her breath shallow. Ravi's hand closed around hers. "We run. Now." But she hesitated. The voices grew louder, closer. Fear rooted her feet to the earth. "Anjali," Ravi pleaded, his voice raw, "trust me. Just one step, and the rest I will carry." Her eyes darted between him and the approaching lanterns, between freedom and duty, between love and fear. And in that hesitation, the storm answered for her. A gust tore through the banyan, splitting a branch that crashed into the flooded ground between them. The voices of the villagers grew nearer. Anjali stepped back, tears streaming down her rain-soaked face. "Ravi," she whispered, her voice breaking like the storm around them. "I cannot." The words struck harder than the thunder. Ravi's heart cracked, but before he could speak, the villagers burst through the rain. Hands seized Anjali, pulling her away, shielding her from him as though he were the danger. He shouted, fought, but was forced back by the fury of men larger, wealthier, unyielding. His cries drowned beneath the storm, his figure swallowed by the sheets of rain. And Anjali, her face pale, her hands reaching for him even as they dragged her away, disappeared into the night. The banyan tree stood shattered, its roots drowning, its branches broken. Beneath it, Ravi sank to his knees, rain and tears indistinguishable. The storm had chosen, and fate had drawn its cruelest line yet. The morning of the wedding dawned heavy and gray. The storm had passed, but its wreckage remained. Broken branches scattered across the lanes, fields drowned in water, the sea restless even in calm. It was as though the world itself bore witness to what had been lost in the night. Ravi had not slept. He sat on the rocks by the shore, staring at the waves as they clawed at the sand. His clothes were torn, his body bruised from the scuffle with the villagers, but none of it hurt as much as the emptiness in his chest. Anjali was to be wed today, to Vikram. The thought cut like salt in a wound. By mid-morning, drums echoed through the village. The temple was adorned with marigolds, its steps washed clean. Women in bright saris carried trays of offerings, Men adjusted garlands and firewood for the sacred rituals. The air, thick with incense and smoke, carried both celebration and unease. Ravi stood at the edge of the crowd, unseen, his heart pounding like the drums. He could not stay away. And there she was, Anjali, draped in crimson silk, her hair adorned with gold and jasmine. She looked every bit the bride her family wished her to be, but her face was pale, her eyes distant. Ravi saw the way her hands trembled as she held the wedding garland. For a moment, time seemed to falter. Her gaze lifted, sweeping across the crowd, and found him. Ravi. He stood in the shadows of the banyan's broken branch that had been brought to the temple as firewood. His eyes locked on hers, fierce, unbroken, burning with the love that refused to die. Anjali's breath caught. In that single look, the storm returned inside her. The priest called for silence. The rituals began. Vikram stood tall, smug, sure of his victory, but Anjali's heart was no longer hers to give. It had been Ravi's since that first glance in the rain. The moment came. The sacred knot to be tied, the fire to witness. Anjali's fingers shook. She glanced again at Ravi, her eyes glistening with tears. He stepped forward just slightly, his lips forming words she could not hear but knew. Come. The village watched as hesitation rippled across her. Vikram's eyes narrowed. Her father's brows furrowed. Murmurs spread like wildfire. And then, Anjali dropped the garland. Gasps erupted. The priest faltered mid-chant. Her mother's hands flew to her mouth in shock. Anjali turned, her anklets jingling as she fled the platform, her sari trailing behind like a flame. Straight into the crowd, straight toward Ravi. The village roared with chaos, voices shouting, hands reaching to stop her. But in that moment, none could keep her from him. She reached him, breathless, trembling. Ravi. He grasped her hands, pulling her close. It's not too late. Run with me now. For a heartbeat, she believed. She saw it all, the sea carrying them to another shore, the life they could build beyond the reach of family and village. Freedom, love, defiance turned into destiny. But then she saw her father collapse to his knees, shame etched into his face. Her mother weeping, clutching at the temple steps. The villagers' fury rising, already branding her a curse, and her heart broke again. Her hands slipped from Ravi's grip. I cannot, she whispered, her voice shattering. If I go, they will never survive it. My family will drown in dishonor. I will not let them die for my love. Ravi's chest heaved, his eyes wet with rage and grief. And what of me, Anjali? Do I not die without you? Her tears streamed freely now. She touched his face with trembling fingers, memorizing the lines of the man she loved more than life itself. You will live, Ravi. You must. Even if I cannot. And then, before he could speak, she pressed her forehead to his one last time, and turned away. The villagers surged forward, pulling her back, shielding her from him, as though he were the danger, though they did not see that she was breaking apart with every step. Ravi stood rooted, the world spinning around him. His arms hung useless at his sides, his body shaking. The drums began again, harsher now, as if forcing the ritual forward, drowning the truth of what had just transpired. By the time the fire was lit once more, Ravi was gone from the temple, and Anjali, her face streaked with tears, sat beside Vikram with the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had chosen duty, but her heart remained with the man she could not save. The wedding ended as the village demanded. The sacred fire burned, the vows were spoken, and Anjali, draped in crimson and gold, was bound to Vikram. To the crowd, it was a victory of tradition, of honor upheld. But to Anjali, it was a funeral, the burial of every dream she had once dared to carry. Ravi did not return to the temple. That night he stood alone on the rocks where the sea crashed endlessly, its foam glowing pale beneath the moon. His chest ached with grief, but also with a strange clarity. He had fought the storm, faced the village, bared his soul, and still, fate had denied him. Yet when he closed his eyes, he could still feel her touch, hear her voice whispering in the rain, "I love only you." The sea roared, as though agreeing. In the days that followed, Ravi withdrew from the village. He went to sea more often, taking his boat farther than others dared, braving waters that swallowed lesser men. Some said he sought fortune, others said he sought death. Perhaps it was both. Anjali, meanwhile, lived in silence. Vikram's house was larger, filled with silks and servants, but it was also a cage. She moved through its corridors like a ghost, her laughter gone, her eyes dimmed. Vikram grew restless with her distance, but no wealth or power could draw her heart. It had been left by the banyan tree, beneath the monsoon rains, with Ravi. Seasons changed. Years passed. The village began to forget, as villages always do, but not entirely. For sometimes, when the monsoon winds returned, when the banyan tree groaned under the weight of rain, whispers would rise. "Do you remember?" the old women said at the well. "The fisherman's son who stood against them all? The teacher's daughter who loved him but could not choose him?" Children grew up hearing the tale, not knowing where truth ended and legend began. And yet, the truth lingered, in small, quiet ways. A boy with dark eyes and a smile that reminded some of Ravi grew up in Vikram's household, calling Anjali his mother but carrying a spirit that seemed born of the sea. The villagers never spoke it aloud, but they saw the resemblance. Anjali never denied it. She only held the child tighter, whispering stories of waves and banyan trees, planting in him the memory of a man he would never know. As for Ravi, one night, his boat did not return. The sea had been merciless, swallowing even the strongest. Some said he had been claimed by the storm. Others swore they still saw him, rowing beyond the horizon, a shadow against the dawn. But whenever the waves struck hard against the rocks, Anjali would sit by her window and listen. And in the roar of the tide, she would hear his voice. "I will wait a lifetime if I must." And though her arms were empty, her heart carried him, not as a wound, but as a flame that no storm could extinguish. The banyan tree still stood at the edge of the fields, scarred by the storm that once split its branch, but alive. Its roots dug deeper each year, its branches reaching wider, as if remembering. And when the monsoon rains returned, villagers said they could hear the whispers of two lovers in its leaves, a boy and a girl, their laughter carried on the wind, their promises echoing through time. Not a tragedy, not a victory. Something in between. A love that could not live in the world but would not die in memory. The song of the sea, the whispers of the monsoon.
Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe.